Hi, welcome to our preview and first class of Secrets of the Sun. I'm Barry Rosen. Many of you know me from my newsletters or Facebook columns. I've been teaching Vedic astrology online since 1990, online since 2016. I've been teaching. I used to teach live financial astrology courses in groups since 1990 even. So been very involved in Vedic astrology since 1986. I like to start on time to honor Shani. This is Saturday, and one of the remedies for Saturn is to always start on time. Luckily, I have a very strong Saturn, so I am going to start, and then I know more people will join a little bit late, and then I'll fill in some more details about what we'll do today. And I usually start with some put my contact information back up. Well, I usually start with some Vedic prayers. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirvigyam Kudame Deva, Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Jnanamulam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Vakyam, Mokshamulam Guru Kipa. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Richoma Amritam Gamaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vivishai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Aditaye Somaye Mangale Buddhaye Cha Guru Shukrashanibis Cha Rahave Ketave Namaha. Honoring the great teachers, spiritual teachers, also and gods, goddesses, Lord Krishna, Goddess Saraswati, my Vedavyasa, cognizer and writer of the Vedas, and my spiritual tradition, and all my great Jyotish teachers. Okay. Let me say a little bit about myself and go back to my contact information. So this is actually a real first class. What I do is when I do classes, there's always material that you have to cover in the first class, which is sometimes like I call it the ocean in a drop. So this class, which starts next week, has actually 15 lessons in it. And I'm going to give you kind of a taste of each one of the lessons, as well as giving some background on the sun. And I'll give some practical things. One of the things that I don't do as much of in the first class is I don't usually have as much time to do a lot of case studies, but in all my classes, I use my students' charts if they give permission to do case studies with my students' charts, and I also do a lot of case studies with famous people. We will do some of that today, but not as much as I usually do. I tend to lecture more at these first preview classes. I will take questions toward the end. And again, questions should be more directed toward material that I've covered. Sometimes people ask about their personal charts, and I just don't know them well enough to kind of give a full answer. But what I can do, you can always sign up for a consultation with me, and I'm happy to go into detail about what you need. So we hope to go about an hour and 45 minutes today. I actually have a lot of material. I have probably 3 or 4 hours of material, but I put it all together because I'll use it in future classes. And I'll just kind of give you a taste of some of the core issues that we do. Again, this is my contact information. Get to... So I was telling you a little bit about my biography. I've I've been teaching Vedic astrology courses online since 2016, and there are about over 50 course tapes on my YouTube channel. They tend to be long. Most of them are 2 hours. There's a couple hour ones there. So if you want an additional sampling of how I teach and what I teach, and a lot of those are introductions to my classes also. So that's available. I've spoken at numerous conferences. I've been speaking at the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference since 1998. Dennis Harness and I are good friends. I've been speaking at the British Association of Vedic Astrology in London since 2006. More recently, I've spoken at the Leeds Vedic Astrology Conference and now the Parashara Vedic Astrology Conference that Kashanti has taken over. And there's some other ones that I've spoken at, of course, over the years. I've been a meditation and yoga and breathwork teacher since 1976, and a lot of my work is infused with spirituality, as you'll see. Okay, so this course, and I'll go over this again later. I'm going to start it next week. If there are more people interested in Sunday, it's possible I may be able to switch the class to Sunday. Saturday, I tend to have my best energy. A Secrets of the Sun course really deserves to be on Sunday. It doesn't fit that well into my Sunday schedule, but I'm thinking that if I get a lot of people that have to do it on Sunday, I may be able to switch it around. I sometimes will adjust the time to accommodate different time zones around the world. People in India need earlier times, people in Australia need later times, and so I sometimes I may juggle the time. At the moment, I schedule it for noon. At the moment, the class will be noon on Saturdays, which is my best time to do it, but I sometimes will juggle the last minute. If you have a weird time zone and you're interested in a live class, do let me know. A lot of people will be watching replays of this tape if they're on weird time zones. My classes run about $20 a class, $25 a class. I do offer payment plans. You can email me about those. If you're only interested in taking the first 8 weeks of the class, or because you don't want to commit to a 15-week class, it would be $195, and you can also email me about that. I'll talk more about that later. What the course covers, again, this is the type of thing. So today we're going to cover the nature of the sun, the symbolism, the mythology. We're going to have a taste of all the lessons. Again, I will sometimes switch some of these lessons around based on how the course unfolds. And, at the moment, the next 3 lessons are on life purpose in Vedic astrology. I have a 16-week class on life purpose, and I'm going to bring in some of that to review for those of you who haven't taken that class. And then I will also bring in how we look at the sun for career and life purpose. So that's going to cover about 3 weeks. And of course, we'll look at the sun in various signs and houses as part of that. We'll also look at the yogas of the sun, and there's a sun chart, and there are ways to look at the 4th house from the sun is very important for showing what we love to do. The 10th house is what we need to do for society. So there's we should actually examine. We know there's to use the moon chart and the Rashi chart, but the sun chart can be used in its own right, and we'll reveal some new things. We'll learn that also in week 5. Can't do a class without looking at sun dashas and transits, and in this case, transits are, every time the sun goes into a new sign, it's important, and we get like Makara Sankranti, which began with the sun going into Capricorn, starts the northern ascent of the business year, and it's very important to run for countries to see what their business year is going to be like. You usually do a muhurta to start a new business between January 14th and July 14th when the sun's in the northern hemisphere, because when it moves into the southern hemisphere, it's weaker and you don't want to start a business. So there are all kinds of things you can do when the sun goes into areas. Of course, we can run a chart for a country, and so there are all kinds of interesting things. There's more than just simple transits that we'll look at, but there's also the transits of the sun have their own significance in their own right for major Vedic events. We'll look at the sun as Atmakaraka. When the highest number of degrees in the chart is called the Atmakaraka. The Atmakaraka is sometimes called the king of the chart, but sometimes Sanjay Roth says it's sometimes like you bow down to the king because it creates our deepest lessons for this lifetime. If you have Sun Atmakaraka, then sometimes we have to learn key lessons around humility and leadership, and we'll do a whole lesson on that. It's one of my favorite topics. We'll look at the sun's nakshatras, Kritika, Urta, Flaguni, and Uttarashadha, and how those manifest in people's charts. And there's a lot of hidden knowledge with sun's nakshatras too that we'll look at, and I'll talk about that during the course. And then we'll look at the adityas. And the adityas are the sun gods, and we'll do 2 per week. And for those of you who've studied nakshatras, there's a mythology around the deities of the nakshatras, and if you have that nakshatra, if you understand the mythology of the deity, you understand the karma that you're going through. And the adityas are a little bit like that also. And so we're going to look at those in great detail, and they're quite fascinating. And then finally, in week 15, we'll look at the sun in the life of politicians, which is very important. Usually there's a sun Rahu connection or moon Rahu connection. And politicians, as we know, are quite fascinating, and they want to make us think they're important with sun conjunct Rahu. Okay. One last announcement. I am offering weekly meditations for developing consciousness for astrologers. Every good astrologer really needs to kind of develop their consciousness, and that allows them deeper insights into their own lives and other people's lives. And I started, actually, the first weekly meditation is today at 2:15 on Zoom, 2:15 Central Time, and I'll give you the Zoom number if you're interested. Basically, we have 5 minutes of knowledge. We have a certain type of meditation from the ACOM group, and they're very powerful. Some of them are healing meditation. Some of them allow you to set your intentions for what you want. Some of them are, there's kind of a variety of them, but they're very powerful. And then at the end of them, I give some Shakti or blessings out to empower you with new joy. And they're quite wonderful, and I just started this last fall. So I'm going to be doing it after class every week, and if you just want to come for the meditations, you can email me, and I'll put you on the list. But if you want to come today, the Zoom meeting ID is 871-7465-6683. And again, that's 2:15 every Saturday. At the moment, I've listed it on Zoom through April 15th. They're about 40 to 50 minutes. We go pretty briskly, and they're very powerful. And so if you would like to join us, you definitely get a blessing and some diksha and joy from them. So again, Zoom 871-7465-6683, and that will happen today after this class. Particular acknowledgments to people who have helped me in developing this course. Bill Levesey, of course, is, if you need a textbook by Beneath the Vedic Sun, on Beneath the Vedic Sky, Zoran Radislovich, one of Sanjay's devotees, Brush Up on Vedic Astrology, Volume 1, which is hard to get. I think it's out of print now. Misty Larson has done some wonderful lectures on the adityas. Cosmic Insights had a wonderful article on Sankranti, and one of my oldest teachers, Terry Bilda, has some wonderful material too. Okay, so let's start. Let's talk about the sun a little bit. In ancient Vedic, cultures have always worshipped the sun. In ancient Vedic culture, the sun was prayed to 3 times a day, and that is with the Gayatri mantra. I actually went to India in 2014 and got initiated to learn the Gayatri mantra. It took a month to really learn all the prayers that are involved in doing the Gayatri mantra powerfully, and it's an extremely powerful ceremony that you learn, and it just brings in the sun's energy, which is good for health and clarity and consciousness, and very blessed to have done that. The sun kind of represents Brahma, the creator, and obviously it causes the 4 seasons, and it's said that the solar system kind of floats amidst the 7 lokas or heavens. So there's all these lokas. You've heard of Brahma Loka, where the gods hang out. There are kind of 7 layers of heavens. That's a whole lecture in itself. But The sun is the father of the stars and the king of the planetary kingdom. He is the soul of the Kali Purusha, hence he's the primeval creative energy and symbol of the spirit. We all know about the Big Bang theory, and Ashwini nakshatra, where the Big Bang started, had all the energy to kind of create the universe in it, and that's, you know, where the sun's exalted. It's kind of this PowerPoint for creative energy, for even creating the universe. The sun is obviously the Lord of Leo. It represents the heart of the Kali Purusha, and it gives vitality to everybody. It's connected to courage, valor, royalty, the right eye, and gold. These are simple things that we all know. It's also connected to Lord Shiva. Jupiter and the sun are connected to Lord Shiva, and if your Ishtadevata is Sun or Jupiter, you would do mantras for Lord Shiva. Ishtadevata is Shiva, so I think my sun is my strongest planet, which is why we have a course on it. Okay, so the sun matures at age 50, and there's a dasha which governs our life cycles, called the Nisargika dasha. And for example, everybody is ruled by Venus between around age 13 to age 29. And what happens between age 13 and 19? We're interested in you know, boys and girls and sex and being in relationship and doing social things and stuff like that. And then Jupiter takes over at age 30 when we need to have a family and we start living family life. Anyway, there's this whole series of natural cycles that everybody goes through, and the sun governs ages 50 to 70. So it's a long period, and it governs a period when we mentor others. Sometimes it's our grandchildren, sometimes it's other people. I mean, I've been mentoring other astrology students, and you know, so the sun energy really kind of matures for everybody around age 50. As I mentioned earlier, the sun is strongest in the northern hemisphere when it moves from Capricorn on January 14th into July 14th, and that's when we start businesses, because the sun has a lot of kind of business energy along with Mercury. Now, just real quickly, you know, we can't do the sun in houses, but to me, the interesting thing, the sun in the Kendras, I think, is important. The first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses. The sun in the first is generally good for health and righteousness and political success and humanitarian instincts and good morals. Again, it depends what sign it's in. But if it's afflicted, you know, it could be afflicted by the nodes, or if it's in a weak sign like Aquarius or Libra or something, it may be, sun in the first could be lazy or combative, or, you know, may have too much ego. In any case, sun in the first is considered a very powerful position. Now, the fourth house is not nearly as, you know, we know the sun has Digbala, or strength, in the 10th house, where it brings fame and success. And the fourth house, that's the opposite from the 10th house. So it's a kind of a weaker place. It causes restlessness and disturbed emotion and ever-burning passions. In the 7th house, it may give, the 7th house in general, people don't understand the 7th house. They always think it's relationship, but the 7th house tends to be sunset. And the sun is particularly weak in the 7th house because it's, you know, drive into the sunset, you have a kind of a blind spot. You can't see. The energy is kind of weak. What happens at, you know, 5 or 6 o'clock now when the sun's going down? You feel tired because the sun's going down, and you go for the coffee or the chocolate, or you eat something, and ideally you should meditate as the sun's going down. You know, there's Gayatri mantras that you do and practices that you do when the sun goes down, because it's a weak period. And so if you have sun in the 7th house, it's kind of one of the weaker places to have the sun, and it doesn't help relationships. You tend not to be very cooperative if you have sun in the 7th house. Again, Digbala, sun in the 10th house, Digbala, where status and wealth are attracted and there's fame and success. Sun in the 12th is called Atmakaraka sthana. That's where a planet is dead. There are different places where planets are considered dead, and people don't always know this. Jupiter's dead in the 3rd house because the 3rd house is a very sexual, playful energy, and Jupiter really should be in the 9th house, connected to religion, and not interested in sex and play, and not following its religious dharma. So the sun in the 12th house is kind of hidden. You know, planets in the 12th house get lost, I think the 12th house sun always brings out low self-esteem. It's hidden kind of from view. People don't see you. The sun wants to shine in the 10th house. It wants to be seen. The 12th house is kind of sunrise. It's kind of, the sun's not quite up very much. You can't be seen very much. And so it's very, um, it's very kind of a difficult place to have the sun. Again, we'll go through all the houses at some point. We know the sun's exalted in Aries between April 14th and May 14th approximately. And people don't understand exalted and debilitated planets very well. It doesn't mean they're always bad or always good. And I don't like to use those things. There's always so many qualifications that we have to have. Um, exalted suns, it depends on what the rising sign is, whether the sun is a good planet for you. We'll look at some charts. Hitler has an exalted sun, but it's in the 7th house. So it depends what sign it's in, what house it's in, what planets are connected to it. But I find sometimes people with exalted suns have too much ego if it's afflicted in any way. And the sun's like, I have a friend with an exalted sun in the 9th for Leo rising, and he's sends out solar flares with his energy. It's so powerful. It burns everybody up. You just kind of want to run away, even though he's incredibly brilliant and, you're attracted to him because he's like an exalted sun, like a king. But there's a lot of ways his life hasn't worked because he hasn't seen the blind spot there. Sun in Libra again is considered debilitated, but it's not as bad in the last 10 degrees in Jupiter's nakshatra. I tend to think if the sun's not afflicted in Libra, which means there's no, other aspects to it that are negative, then it may be a good team player. I do find people who do very well with Sun with Libra if it's not afflicted and it's in the, and it's the right rising sign and stuff like that. The debilitation may make the planet too sexual. It may take away its archetypal quest for the divine. So again, we shouldn't. It may create health problems. But the thing is, I don't like using the words exalted and debilitated because debilitated means you think like you have a limp, you've lost a limb or something. And it's not always the case. Okay, let's look at other levels of the sun. Again, basic information. Again, the sun governs status and fame, and dark side of it can be fall from grace. You get the sun, you get Rahu eclipsing the sun during a sun Rahu or Rahu sun period. The person may suddenly fall from power, like a politician. Eclipses are known to knock people off the throne. Obviously, a strong sun creates strong self-confidence, which we all need to be in the world and be seen. Low self-esteem, we want to hide at home and not go out because we don't think we're good enough. And so, the sun is very important on that emotional level. Confidence is a key word. There are all kinds of Ayurvedic components to it. Obviously, professions that can govern military or commercial leaders, directors, doctors, politicians, public persons like entertainers are very common. So I like to look at the sun also in terms of ego. We also have to look at Mars for ego, but those two fire planets have a lot to do with ego, and it's a word that gets misused a lot. But sometimes if we have high self-esteem, like the archetype is such that the sun is king, and in ancient days, the king wanted to serve his people. He really cared about them. He had all the money in the world. He wasn't interested in taking everybody's money or having all the power in the world. And there were kings like that, but there were times when kings really loved their people and they wanted to serve their people. And that's the highest aspect of the sun. And an exalted sun that's unafflicted with the right rising sign, they just they really do want to serve. There's enough high self-esteem that they want to serve and give to others. When there's lower self-esteem, then we're caught in this battle to be a somebody, and it creates false egos and identity, to hide low self-esteem. I mean, a very famous case that people have been talking about for the last 4 to 8 years is Donald Trump. He's got, he's a Leo rising with Sun conjunct Rahu, and you get the sense that and you know, I don't have any judgment about him. I mean, he did some very good things, but people can't stand him with that because he wants, you know, he's very involved in being a somebody and wanting, you know, power, and it's very kind of, so there's a dark side to the sun that comes out in politicians, usually with Sun Rahu combinations. We'll look at that in lesson 15. Jack Canfield, who's done major work on self-esteem, said 75% of the population has this problem. And usually this is when the sun's afflicted by Saturn or Rahu or Ketu in particular, but it can be sun in Libra, it can be sun in Aquarius, which is very weak, sun in the 7th house. There are a lot of ways this can manifest. But you know, the major issue around this is, you know, was your father, did you have a good father? Was he a mentor? Was he able to lead you without being too bossy? You know, good leaders kind of get in the trenches with others. You know, a good leader is not somebody who sits in the office and you know, delegates. A good leader kind of goes down to the floor, and people are having problems. He works with them. He makes them feel like he's there and he cares. That's the, you know, the good energy of the sun. If your self-esteem is too low, you may struggle with low-paying jobs and getting no promotions because you don't feel good enough about yourself. So self-esteem is important. You know, if our parents and siblings and teachers made us angry, then we decide not to move forth in the world and achieve, and then you kind of lack vision. And this often happens. And then you get some people who have too much ambition with like Sun Rahu, and they become so self-centered and focused about looking good and being somebody that they're not. Again, Rahu's always creating these phony masks, and eventually it leads to some fall. So, you know, ultimately with the sun archetype, we have to decide, do we strive for achievement in order to better ourselves and others? Again, the king archetype should be serving others and helping others, or are we more interested in getting ego strokes and feeling better at ourselves and, you know, and puffing ourselves up and wearing a false mask? So there's a lot of complex archetypes and veils with the sun ego. The sun also, you know, is the creative principle, fullness of life, which all life springs out of, in which all life returns. You know, it's the heart on some level. It's one level of the heart. The 5th house in Vedic astrology, Leo, is half of the heart. The 4th house, Cancer, is the other half of the heart on a physical level. But the sun is kind of the divine heart, dividing, you know, it's about uniting heart and mind and will in the service of the supreme. And again, the sun is king in the positive archetype, listens to all, but follows his own inner guidance. So that's why Leos have trouble listening to others and taking orders from others, and they usually want to be in business for themselves. I mean, for the most part, you know, Leo rising, you know, or there are a lot of other combinations. They just need to be in business for themselves because they don't like taking orders from people. The sun is all accepting. He integrates all philosophies and points of view without being pulled into any of them. This is a beautiful quality of the sun. So he kind of, you know, you know, if all the planets came out of the sun in the Big Bang, it's kind of like he accepts them all, and he's concerned with the whole rather than the parts, and hence he's a leader in the community. So very positive qualities of the sun. Favorite fantasies of the sun: power and authority, dreams of fame and fortune, quest for power as a politician, the stars in Hollywood wanting to be seen. Again, probably could do a whole lesson on Hollywood suns, you know, because they're so fascinating. And again, you know, we know the dark side of the sun in Hollywood, and you know, there is a bright side to the sun in Hollywood also. We love our stars. Again, the strong sun is a benevolent power, and the weak sun is a dictator. So, you know, we get all sides, and like everything in Vedic astrology, you know, we have to judge what's going on. Sun often rules doctors, healers, stockbrokers, leaders, commanders, politicians, forestry people, leaders, heads of state, and civil servants. So, kind of fun. Sun facts, you know, we know sun is exalted in Aries. We went through that. Friends of Sun, Mars, and Jupiter. So Sun really, Sagittarius is a really great place for the Sun. Pisces is not as good because it's 8 houses from Leo. Sun is fine with Scorpio. It's happy in Cancer because the moon's a friend, but it's still 12 houses away from home. It's deeply unhappy in Aquarius because it's 7 houses away. Again, it's just not. We have Sun going to Aquarius in a couple weeks, and it's always kind of a difficult time. Capricorn is not a great place for the sun, but still it's the business sign, and it's the 10th. Capricorn is the natural 10th sign of the zodiac. So in a sense, the sun has dignity in Capricorn on some level, and it starts the business year, and it's celebrated as the start of the business year. So even though it's not really happy in Capricorn, there's still some strength because Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac. The sun is neutral with Mercury, so it tends to do okay in Gemini and Virgo. Again, debilitated in Libra because it gets lost in group activity and loses leadership. So again, the sun is a natural leader. Sometimes in Libra, it ends up in, its leadership doesn't come out, and then it feels like it's not using its archetypal nature to be a leader. It may get pushed away. Again, the sun's nature is the search for the divine, and the dark side of the sun in Leo sometimes is getting caught up in relationships and money and affairs, and that can happen in Libra. We talked about the 10th and the 12th house and the 7th house and sunset already. Okay, you know all this stuff. This is just really basic review. Okay, let's get into a lot of stuff that you don't know. Surya Lagna, the sun's, in some ways, the Westerners have gotten it right. It's very important to analyze the sun for destiny, resources, finances, and good fortune. Actually, that slide got messed up, but let's, before I talk about that, which is coming up, I want to talk about the sun's combustion. So when the sun gets too close to a planet, it kind of burns it up. And astronomically, that's starting to happen with Saturn last week. If you look in the evening sky, you can no longer see Saturn because it's too close to the sun. So when planets are no longer visible in the evening sky, because they're too close to the sun, they're considered combust. And this, now what people don't understand about combustion is the sun is a spiritual energy. It's Shiva. So it spiritualizes the planets that come in control with it. So Venus combust, which happens about 8 degrees in direct motion, happens every couple of years or so. If you were born with that combination, it means that you have more control over your sensual desires and a stronger sense of dharma, and you may actually be more spiritual. But the material values of Venus and your ability to are burned up. So we should never look at combustion as a bad thing, in the sense that it actually spiritualizes the planet. Mercury too close to the sun, and again, Mercury is used to the sun. I always say it's got lots of suntan oil. I think 5 degrees is, technically Mercury is combust within 14 degrees, which happens too much, but 5 degrees of combustion, is pretty extreme. And then the sun may darken monetary achievement, but it will increase spiritual life. Again, Mercury is a business planet. It's a planet of business and a money significator. And so sometimes it can burn up Mercury. We'll learn more about all the rules of sun combustion. They're a lot more complicated than most people know. The sun and the Lagna. So the sun is the Karaka, or significant, for the rising sign. So we can do remedial energy measures for the sun to help the rising sign. And we will have a lesson on remedies. I'm kind of sticking it in various places as we get to it. There's always the important thing about Vedic astrology. It's kind of cruel to diagnose that you have this problem if you don't offer a remedy. And Vedic astrology originally was about doing pujas and mantras, to help people get through their weak planets. I think that's very important, and I've added a lot of Western remedies. Not everybody likes Vedic deities and mantras and things like that, so we have to come up with Western cures too, which I do. Again, a strong Lagna generally supports good health and intelligence. Gayatri mantra, which is one of the highest mantras, supports health and well-being, and it does require initiation. People, Om Bhur Bhuvatsvaha Tatsavatur Varenium Bargo Devatsya Dhimihi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayate. Anyway, that's the Gayatri mantra. It's considered one of the most powerful mantras because it's a mantra for the sun, and it's great for health. And I just recently found out my guru had prescribed it for me. That's why I went through this complex initiation and studying the whole Sandhya ceremony that one does to do it properly. And it was a very life-changing event for me. And actually, a lot of the Vedic astrology books and my classes started coming out more strongly when I did the Gayatri Mantra on a regular basis and doing the Sandhya practice. Because it really just kind of elevates consciousness quite a bit, creates incredible clarity. And then recently I found out, because of where my moon is, that I could have a tendency towards Alzheimer's later in life, and the Gayatri Mantra is the remedy for that. So my guru knew when he prescribed Gayatri Mantra for me. But again, you can't just pick it up and do it. You really do need to be initiated into it. And if you have any interest, it's a long process, but it's very powerful. If the sun's conjunct other planets, it will, have an important effect. And of course, the impact of the sun will happen during sun dashas or Leo periods. You use Rashi dashas, which I do, or planets connected to the sun's nakshatras. So we'll be looking at that. But if the sun's conjunct malefics, like if it's conjunct Mars, it will increase combative skills and debts will be accumulated. Sun conjunct Saturn may create money issues, struggles with authority, people will attempt to pull you down. Again, the archetype is, look what happened through the whole Trump era. The whole time it was trying to dethrone the king. And somehow our society doesn't like leaders and kings if their egos are too strong, and they will do everything to kind of take down the king. And this is kind of unfortunate, because sometimes the replacements aren't as good, and so, and again, I'm not being political here, I'm just saying it's just kind of an archetypal pattern that we have in society. If you have a well-placed Saturn with dignity, and it's conjunct the sun, let's say if it were if it exalted in Libra or something, it might create health issues and hard work and struggles before your age 36. And Saturn ripens at age 36. And so then after that, it will bring, Saturn can be quite wonderful for money and career and status. And have an exalted Saturn. There are a lot of wonderful things that come out of it. But combust Saturn can be very wonderful. We're going to have Saturn conjunct the Sun on February 16th. I always feel wonderful when that happens, because my Atmakaraka is Saturn, and the sun infuses its spiritual energy into Saturn, and I just feel wonderful during that exact conjunction. So the exact conjunction, I wrote about this in my newsletter last week, is called, in Western astrology, called Cassimi, and it's within 48 minutes or something. And I notice if you have noticed in transit that it's actually the sun will spiritualize a planet. So again, think of the sun as the divine, and it's Shiva, and it's spiritualizing and purifying the dark energies of the planet out. Sun Rahu is always complicated. Rahu causes eclipses. It may give fortune through money from abroad. That'll be the positive way to look at it. Sun Rahu often leads to fall from leadership. Sun Ketu creates a lot of battles and unstable finances and cruelty. Now, I missed a slide. Let me make sure I'll pick another place. I have Sun conjunct benefics someplace, and generally, I don't know, I'll find that slide later, but Sun conjunct Jupiter or Mercury or Venus, can bring out the positive qualities of those planets and create really beautiful people who have good moral. Sun Jupiter conjunctions usually create good righteous moral people, and very wonderful scholars. Again, they're both interested in the divine. And Sun Mercury often creates a Buddha Aditya yoga if it's more than in the same sign, more than 14 degrees apart, and creates brilliance. So there's a lot of positive. Sun conjunct benefics can be very good. The sun's lagna, I said one of the things that we'll do in the class is look at the Surya lagna, and there's we'll have to have a whole 2 hours on it. But one of the things that you can look at from the sun is the most important thing to look at in somebody's chart. It may show the ideal career or position that they should be doing. Now, and I forget about this, but it works in my chart. Here's my chart. I use my chart because I know myself really well, so I'm not shy, and I will lose famous people, and I will use your charts. So I've got Sun in Pisces in my 5th house, and I have a very strong Sun in the 5th house. It's in Jupiter's nakshatra of it's in Jupiter's nakshatra there, and it's Purva Bhadrapada. And my Jupiter is stationary. You can't see it in the chart. In 3 hours it went stationary, so it's very powerful in my chart. And I have Jupiter and Ketu in the 4th house. Now, so if we just look at karakas, obviously what I should be doing, forth from the Sun, my ideal profession is connected to Jupiter, teaching, spiritual teaching, teaching of Jyotish. Those are all things that I have a passion for. Jupiter, and Jupiter's actually my Atmakaraka in Gemini astrology, the planet with the 2nd highest degree. So I've always loved teaching. I've always somehow taught something. I taught college literature. I taught film studies. I taught financial astrology. I've been a counselor in Vedic astrology. I've been a financial advisor. So all these things kind of are indicated, and there are things. Now there have been blocks to all of this happening because we also have to see the position from the Lagna. And in my case, Jupiter's in the 8th house from the Lagna, and we don't really like to have Jupiter in the 8th house. It can create some obstacles or problems, or maybe problems, at times. So because there's not total coherence from looking at the planet from the Sun and from the Lagna, there's an 8th house relationship from the Lagna. There was some struggle for me to get to where I'm at, but I'm clearly at my very best place, and it's something that I'm doing what I most like to do. We could also look at the 10th house is sometimes what we have to do for society, and sometimes those are jobs that we have to do and we end up doing. So the 10th from the Sun, I've got Rahu in Sagittarius, and I've got Jupiter aspecting it. So I ended up in financial astrology, and in that, Rahu has a lot to do. Sagittarius and Jupiter are planets connected to investment. Rahu is the quasi gambling planet also, and so the darker side of my profession is, even though I'm an investment advisor, I end up attracting a lot of gamblers because investors always are connected to gambling on some level. Because, they're not looking at just retirement. They're looking at, like, how can I make a killing the next year on Tesla, which has done very well the last month. But anyway, so 10th from the Sun sometimes is what we have to do for society. The 7th from the Sun shows what we want to live for. It shows the path of life and knowledge we desire. My Sun aspects Virgo, and my life is about service and healing and helping others and health. So let's look at that again. So we can look at, again, the 7th house is always about our desire nature, anywhere it goes. The 7th from the Moon is important for our desire nature, and 7th from the Sun is also our desire nature. And again, Virgo is a planet of agriculture and service and healing, and I have had a strong desire to help people with healing. A lot of my Vedic astrology practice is very involved in healing and finding hidden medical remedies from people. I also work with farmers. Some of that just kind of happened. I help them find the best prices for their crops. So it's kind of interesting. I was looking at that. Okay, hold on. And 10th from the Sun, we said the karma profession that we were born to do. 8th from the Sun also may be a place of enemies and conflicts and destiny. Anyway, we'll look at that with a lot of examples and case studies when we do it. I just have to give you a taste of what we're going to do, because you can only teach so much in an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, and we're just trying to give you a taste of what we can do. Here's the slide on Sun conjunct Benefics. Again, conjunct Jupiter, Gopala Yoga, high integrity, control of sexual energy and wealth. Sun, Moon. Now the new moon is considered like a place of a simple mind. I find that new moons are kind of troubled people, but sometimes they're blessed with spirituality because material life doesn't work. So that might be a positive way of looking at a new moon chart if the person is having trouble dealing with that. A full moon chart, I'm sorry, actually the new moon chart may actually have more material blessings. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. The full moon chart has a lot of spiritual gifts. I find full moon people, sun opposite moon, are very special people, and they always have really high energies. Okay, so we're going to look a lot at zodiacal signs of the sun, and again, this is something that we've shied away from because Western astrology has put so much emphasis on it, and it's kind of like the sun and the moon are the two most important planets, and why aren't we? I don't know anybody who's taught a course on the sun, and I've been around for many years, and it's one of the reasons I'm doing it. It's so important, and I taught a whole course on the moon too, because they're the two most important planets, the luminaries. They're the sattvic planets. They represent, so the sun is going to show us our wealth and resources, and it shows us our experience in the world. Now, levels of ego and self-esteem connected to the sun. The sun in Aries is going to be joyful in activity, kingly, helping others like the father, always taking care of his children. The dark side of an exalted sun might be bossy, too authoritative, not a team player, or dogmatic. Now let's look at a couple charts, and I didn't copy them, so I have to open up Sri Jyoti Star. Okay, this is a chart of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. He's an enlightened guru in India. There's 150 million people who have taken his practices. He was my guru for many years. He's a very great man. He's a very humanitarian leader. He's got an exalted sun at 28 degrees in Aries. He has Capricorn rising. What I've really loved about him is, again, notice how the sun is really not too afflicted. Now in Jaimini astrology, we see that Rahu and Saturn are afflicting the sun because Scorpio and Aries aspect each other. So we do have that. I have to think about how that manifests. But he's very he's created all these charities to help children and crippled people and prisoners and wounded veterans and things like that. And most of his whole life is dedicated to service and teaching other people to be in service to others. So he definitely has this kind of kingly energy of Sun in Aries. Again, it's in the 4th house, where I think he's kind of living his passion of being that divine leader, and teaching humanity to help others. I think that's kind of a very positive way of looking at it. But we can look at somebody like Adolf Hitler, who I don't really ever like looking at his chart. We've got Sun in Aries. It's conjunct Mercury, conjunct the Ascendant Lord, a retrograde Venus, which is the Atmakaraka. Again, a frustrated painter who never really made it. And conjunct Mars. So he's got, obviously 4 planets in Aries. He's got 2 planets in Sag. What is he going to do? He's going to be a fighter, right? But in this case, the sun in Aries is in the 7th house. We said the sun in the 7th house is weak. It brings out the darkest part of the sun. Mars is not a good planet for him. He was very frustrated in relationships. He could have any woman he wanted, but he didn't get married until the final day in the bunker. That sun has really kind of a lot of dark energy because it's, the dictator comes out here, and the 7th house is kind of, remember we said the 7th house is a blind spot. It's sunset, and when you have planets in the 7th house, you just don't see what's right. The sun killing, creating World War II to enslave humanity, to kill the Jews, it's certainly quite twisted, and it's the type of thing when you have, you're at sunset and you have too many planets in the 7th house, the dark energy comes out. So, you can have an exalted sun, but it can be quite dark. Karl Marx also has an exalted sun. He's still around influencing the world. Sun in Taurus, again, Sun in Taurus, confidence in handling people well, love of pleasure, great stamina, wealth over time, conservative, ego centered around material and creating wealthy being. Taurus, we've got, look at a couple different people. John F. Kennedy, I always like using his chart. Virgo rising, again, Rahu co-rules Virgo. Rahu's debilitated. He was ruled by Mercury. He's got Sun in the 9th, with 2 benefics, Venus in its own sign, and Jupiter, Jupiter's a little bit weak here. It's not a great planet for him anyway, but the 2 benefics with the Sun, is really kind of uplifting him. Its Sun's in the 9th house, which is not always the best place to be. But again, one of our greatest leaders that I always look up to. He had a big heart, obviously. 4th from the Sun is the Moon. And the interesting thing when we look at the lives of politicians, I often find politicians have a 12th house connection with the Sun or the Moon, because good political life should be about service to your country. Not what you can do for yourself. Ask what you can do for your country. And he lived that principle. He taught that principle, and that was that sacrifice with the Moon in the 12th. We'll see Churchill also has that kind of a connection. Another one of our last great leaders. Now look at somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, Leo rising. He's got Sun conjunct Rahu in the 10th. Now, Digbala, Sun is Sandhi, Sun conjunct Rahu, not a wide aspect, but there's something distorted about this Sun, and, incredibly successful if you want to look at people for money, but there's been a lot of darkness going on with all the scandals at Facebook, and the way they were censoring people, and whether you like him or not. I mean, there's something a little bit off with this chart. And then that 3rd house is very complicated, Moon, Saturn, Rahu. There are a lot of deep lessons to learn here. I mean, he was one of the richest people in the world, and Facebook stock fell, I don't know how much, 70, 80%, I don't know. But a lot of problems. And of course, everybody knows Donald Trump's chart. Again, another Leo with Sun Rahu in the 10th. In this case, the Sun's the Atmakaraka, so the life lessons are about humility and being a good leader. But Rahu is kind of distorting the Sun, creating cravings for power and attention, and that's why nobody can deal with him. And yet, a lot of power with Mars in the 1st there, and he did some great things for our country. No one really liked him. The Arudalagna, which is how people see us, has got K2 conjunct it, and that always causes dislike for the person. Okay, we could look at a lot more sun signs. Again, I want to give you a taste of the whole course rather than going into specific things, but we'll eventually get to all these other charts in the course. Career and life purpose. Now, everybody this is a very complicated subject. I taught a 16-week class on it. There's about 16 techniques that I teach, and then you have to kind of look at them all together and see what you come up with. So I'm going to review the essence of those 16 techniques in one of the lessons. Maybe next week. I will see if I decide to do that next week. But we can look at 10th from the Sun and the Moon in the chart. We can look at 4th from the Sun. We could look at the 10th house in the D9. We can look at the 10th house in the D10. We could look at the rising sign and the placement of the 10th Lord in the D10. We can look at the Atmakaraka, which is the planet with the 2nd highest number of degrees. I find that one's very good. We can look at what we've talked about, sun signs, sun in houses, and sun in various nakshatras. So those are things that we're going to get to probably quickly. I have to, sometimes I'll switch around the order of things, but we have 3 or 4 weeks on this, and it's a core part of the course, and a lot of you are interested in it. Here's some examples of it. So if Sun is in the 6th house or Virgo, again, we have to remember the 6th sign of the zodiac and the 6th house are very similar. You get people who are into serving others and protecting others, servants, healers, people involved in medicine, self-improvement strategies, skills that these people have when the Sun is in the 6th house of Virgo: serving, protecting, guarding, healing, managing death and enemies, favorable traits, faithful workers, services. You want to hire a Virgo as an employee because they're just, you know, they're on it. You know, they like working for other people. A fixer, good at repairing, hard workers, good at simple chores and keeping factories running. There are dark sides to everything too. You get, we have to look at this now. If the Sun, I'd say excessive, Sun conjunct Rahu, Mars, or Jupiter, I'd call that excessive, then there may be too oriented toward getting results, too quick to take responsibility, sets expectations too high. They're angry, critical, picky, becoming a victim in volunteer work. And sometimes you give a weak Sun in Virgo, if it's conjunct Ketu or Saturn. They get taken advantage by supervisors, depressed, they don't like speak up for themselves, poor self-promotion. So again, like everything in Vedic astrology, you know, there's 1,000 shades of gray, and we have to learn how to analyze. You can't just say Sun in Virgo without looking at the planets aspecting it, the nakshatras that it's in, what's going on in the Navamsha chart, you know. But so there are different levels of how Sun and Virgo could show up. Supervisors, okay. Sun and Virgo occupations: working with documents, records, secretaries, administrative analysts, service providers, personal assistants, accounting and bookkeepers, writing, editor, computer programming, chiropractors or health workers, engineers, systems analysts, technicians. Now, again, this list isn't exhaustive, but, you know, I do find, you know, these things kind of work, and it's one of the things you kind of want to look at. Okay, so we'll look at all the 12 Sun signs in that way, and I just gave you an example of one of them. Now let's get to the adityas. Now this is something that doesn't get taught very much, and it's quite fascinating, and this gets into the whole Vedic mythology thing. And the whole thing about Vedic, you know, mythology is like, you know, if you study Greek mythology or Roman mythology or any, you know, Icelandic mythology, you know, there's always these great stories that go with the gods and goddesses and their struggles and their learning processes and their weaknesses bleed into the deity. And we saw that with the nakshatras. You know, if you know the story of well, anyway, I don't want to get into nakshatras, but the deities are so important, and the Sun has some primary. These are the Sun adityas, Datya Aditya, Sun in Aries. Now, this is connected to Savitur. Now, what's interesting is, and this we'll look at this, is that Savitur, which is really my favorite god because it's connected to Gayatri Mantra and it's where the Sun's exalted and it brings out the most blessed energy of the Sun, is also connected to Hasta Nakshatra. And so the Sun likes being in Hasta. It's very powerful because it's like Sun in Aries. Now, you wouldn't know that, but because both of them are owned by the same deity. So every Sun Aditya has a nakshatra that's also connected to it. And we'll be looking at this because it's kind of fascinating. So Aryaman, which is Sun in Taurus, is also connected to Uttara Phalguni Nakshatra. And Mitra Aditi, which is the Sun in Gemini, is also connected to the 17th Nakshatra, Anuradha. And so on and so forth. So you kind of start finding out, like Sun in Cancer, Varuna Aditya. Somehow you never think of Sun in Cancer creating doctors, but it does. And then the 24th Nakshatra is also connected to Varuna, and that's Sadabhishak, which is connected to 100 to doctors and healers also. So it's kind of this fascinating interchange between nakshatras and the adityas, and we'll be looking at that. These are the rest of the adityas. Vishwa, and again, you probably aren't all familiar with these, but then you're going to get to know them, and you're going to get to know their stories and how they manifest their personalities. So let's look at one of these as an example. So Sun in Aries is connected to Datta, and another name for Datta is Savitur. And Savitur is creator, and it's like Lord Brahma. And Brahma has all three gunas in it: creation, maintenance, and destruction. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And so that's why it represents the power of the Big Bang. We said when the universe was created, the early degrees of Aries, where Ashwini just has that firepower to explode and create the universe. This is part of the power of the sun in Aries, that incredible creative energy. It's very powerful. It impels people to create a perfect world when you have sun in Aries. It creates long life and excellent health. People, if you have an exalted sun, it's one of the best placements for good health. It also makes very creative people to have sun in Aries because there's so much creativity energy connected to Datta and Lord Brahman. Again, we mentioned that sun is connected to Hasta. Savitur is also connected to the 13th nakshatra, so the sun loves being in Hasta. Who would have thought? And we'll look at some examples of that. If you have leaders, if you have sun in Aries, and we do have a lot of good leaders with sun in Aries. Again, we looked at Hitler before. Let's look at Queen Elizabeth II. We unfortunately just lost her. I mean, she had that wonderful, incredible reign from 1952 until this past year. She's got the correct chart for her. People have rectified this. Is Sag rising. It's just right at the edge of Sag, 29 degrees. And she's got Sun in the 5th house, exalted. And in Divinity astrology, Saturn aspects Aries. We'll have to, if you don't know your Divinity aspects, we'll send you a tape to review them, but they're very important. I call them anchor aspects. Now, normally you wouldn't say that she's got a Saturn aspect to her chart, but the Divinity aspects, which I call anchor aspects, are the ones that we keep all our lives, and they're different from the Parashari aspects, which appear more in transit. But anyway, she's got Saturn aspecting the sun here, and I think this actually helped her with humility. I mean, when you have an exalted sun, you could be a little bit, full of yourself, and I think the Saturn aspect just toned her down, and I think we liked her because she was humble and she was into service. And notice how Saturn's in the 12th house, which is also a house of service. And we remember her work in World War II, helping in the war efforts, and you just got the sense that everybody loved her. She was devoted to her people in service. You didn't, of course she was filled with a scandalous family, but you got the effect that she just had some of the highest aspects of Sun and Aries coming out in this nakshatra. And we looked at Hitler, which is the opposite, somebody who's a dictator and who's just, about power and has no sense of right and wrong. Sun in Capricorn, it's called Bhagya Aditya. Bhagya is connected to wealth. Now, what's Capricorn? Capricorn's the natural 10th sign of the zodiac, right? So Sun goes into Capricorn and starts the business year. So good thing about Bhagya Aditya is, it supports business. Sun in Capricorn is good for business, endeavoring new enterprises, business fame, good physical felicity and abundance. So Sun in Capricorn is like Sun in the 10th house. It's gonna be hard this month to see it, but it generally is kind of good for business and wealth. It depends how afflicted it is and whatever. The challenging part of Bhagya Aditya is that it suffers on account of sexuality or relationships. May have eyesight problems. Let's look at a famous person who you may know, Virginia Johnson, Masters and Johnson, the pioneers of sex studies. If you saw the wonderful series, that Showcase put together. I forgot the name of it. I loved it. There's about 5 seasons of it. It's about the life of Virginia Johnson as she goes from being a secretary to being this famous, she didn't really have the credentials, but she ended up being this famous sex researcher and, pioneered all kinds of great sexual research with Johnson. Now, if you watch the series, her love life was an absolute mess. She went through 2 or 3 husbands and a lot of failed relationships. She had a relationship with Masters, which was scandalous, and that didn't work. But you can see that she's got Sun in Capricorn, 4 planets here in Capricorn in the 11th house. And 11th house is a health house. It isn't always about gains, but I mean she did receive a lot of fame for a woman of her time in mastering a very kind of powerful area of sexuality. But you can just see that with all that Sun and Capricorn energy being Atmakaraka, that it was just difficult for relationships, but there was all this incredible interest in sexuality, which comes out other places in the chart if we look at the Navamsha chart. But very great pioneer, very great woman, very complicated life. And if you, I believe the series was called, was it Masters of Sex? I think it was called Master. I don't know. It was. I'll have to look that up. But it's Showcase did it. Must have finished 3 or 4 years ago, but it was on for about 4 or 5 seasons. It's quite wonderful. Okay, Sun in Taurus. Blessings for loyal family life. Blessings for ancestral karma when it's afflicted. It can create problems with family. Again, Ariman is also the nakshatra that's connected to the 12th nakshatra, Uttarphalguni. There's a connection there. Look at George Bush Sr., our president after Ronald Reagan, who was the previous head of the CIA. Got a very strong Leo rising chart, again, a king. He's got Sun exalted. And that's Sun in the 10th house. So it's got Digbala. Notice the Buddha Aditya Yoga with Sun and Mercury in the same sign, 22 degrees apart. And that created a lot of brilliance. Mercury has a lot of dignity there. Obviously, a very wealthy man. Sun Atmakaraka, however, is supposed to learn lessons around humility. And he was humbled when he lost the election to Bill Clinton in 1992. But one of the things, like any politician, we've got Rahu and Leo. I mean, desire for power. He was responsible for creating, incredible energies in the CIA, and there have been documented, reports, how he actually funneled drugs out of Mexico, using the CIA to bring incredible wealth to himself and his family. There's a lot of scandalous things with the Bush family, even though there's somehow kind of family wonderful, Sun in Taurus, there's this family wonderful feeling, the Bushes, Barbara Bush, it was a big loss when we lost them a couple of years ago, but there's a very dark side to this whole story too, if you go deep into it. Sun in Gemini is connected to Mitra. Mitra is connected to friendship, in both good and bad friendship. So some of the karma of Sun in Gemini is always around friendships. Now, Anuradha Nakshatra in Scorpio, which is my rising sign, is also connected to that same deity. So there's a synergy there. This is kind of interesting. The Sun exalts at 9 or 10 degrees Aries, which is Gemini Navamsha. And this is kind of funny. So the Sun exalts in Gemini Navamsha at 9 or 10 degrees. At 10 degrees, you're already moving into Cancer Navamsha. So between 9 and 10 degrees, that's where the Sun exalts exactly. It's a powerful place. And it turns out that a lot of leaders can have Sun in Gemini. Look at George Bush Jr., son of George Bush Sr. We've got Sun in Gemini in the 12th. Remember I said a lot of presidents have Sun in the 12th for service. In this case, we always feel that his father was running the White House in the background secretly in the 12th house, but he was the good son,
He also has Ketu conjunct the Aruna Lagna, and everybody thought he was totally incompetent. You know, he was a good businessman. He was very successful in business. Very complicated chart in life here also, but he also has Mitra Aditya, and we could look more closely at that as we get in the course. Again, I'm not going to get into the other ones, but we can. Now, we can also look for remedies for the adityas, and it's based on the area of your life. You can pray to a particular aditya. So if you need courage and strength, you can pray to the aditya ruling the sign occupied by the third house in your chart. If you're a Taurus ascendant, then Varuna Aditi in Cancer would give you courage and strength. And there are mantras for all these adityas that we can give you. If you want to improve your career, you can honor the aditya of the 10th house. So your Virgo ascendant, the 10th house from Virgo is Gemini. You could pray to Mitra Aditya to help you. So we'll look at that. It's kind of a funny way to look at remedies here. For sustenance, the force from the sun, again, is the force from the sun is a very important place. It's Abhijit Rashi. Remember I said that's kind of the work that we really love to do, and you can honor the aditya of the sign for sustenance. In doing so, they'll assure you that you'll never face shortages in life. So again, if your sun is in Aries, the force from the sun is Cancer, so you would pray to Varuna Aditya to help you out with sustenance and food shortages or money shortages or things like that. And I have to remember to use these a little bit more often. Actually, they're very powerful. Transits. So another thing that we'll look at in the course is transits and dashas of the sun. And I mentioned there are all these kind of hidden things about when the sun goes into a new sign. Like so Mesha, which is the name for Aries, so Mesha Sankranti, which is really the 14th of April. It's 15th in India sometimes, but really the 14th of April. Mesha Sankranti occurs when the sun moves into its sign of exaltation, Aries, and because it's the first sign of the zodiac, it marks the new year for Hindu calendars. And you can do a solar chart for a country based on Mesha Sankranti, and I've learned these techniques. I tend to like another technique, but that's good. But all of these sun transits actually have some significance, more so than you think. And we'll learn about them. There's sometimes like sun in Capricorn, Makara Sankranti. Again, if you run a chart for Makara Sankranti, when the sun goes into Capricorn for the country, you'll see you can predict the business chart of that country for the year and how well the economy will do that year. If you're interested in agriculture, you would run a chart from when the sun goes into Cancer nakshatra. I mean to Cancer to Cancer, and you can predict the agriculture from that chart. So all these kind of fascinating techniques for prediction using the solar ingresses. So there's a lot more to sun transits than you can imagine. And I have to finish my research on that, but I have learned some of these techniques before, and they're quite fascinating. There's general remedies for the Sankrantis. So again, when we get to remedies, we could learn remedies for the sun transits if they're affecting you in a negative way, and they can. In general, transits of the sun do better 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 11th from the natal moon or the ascendant, but there are all kinds of rules for transits that we'll learn. Sun dashas are another kind of thing that we'll be looking at, and I don't have a lot to say about sun dashas at the moment, but generally we want the sun is strong. The sun dasha will be good if the sun is in a friend's sign, particularly like Leo or Aries or Sagittarius. It's connected to good houses, 3, 6, 10, or 11. And then the sun period could bring confidence, organizational skills, focus on spirituality, people are attracted to you, creativity, confidence, independence, actualizing goals and vitality. A weak sun Again, sun periods will bring about issues with government and father, maybe living in a forest, heart and eyesight issues. I created affirmations for all these periods. My affirmation for the sun period was, my eternal flame lights the way and leads all out of darkness. I lead with generosity, inspiration, and honor all those around me. So it's my affirmation. But you can have a dark sun period, sun in the 12th, sun in Libra, sun in Aquarius. You know, the 8th house is not a great place for the sun. There are a lot of places where the sun can be problematic. Can block expressing your power and strength, eclipsing your goals. May have problems with employees, or problems with power and pompousness, overspending, and things like that. So we can go into more detail about the sun dashas and bhuktis on that class. Sun's nakshatras. Nakshatras are quite fascinating. There's two levels of nakshatras that we need to do. When we do the adityas, we have to look at the nakshatra that is connected to the aditya also, because there'll be some synergy. As we said, there's a connection between Hasta and Aries, because they're both connected to the same deity, and we'll have to see how that manifests in people's charts and things like that. But that's one level of nakshatras that we'll have to look at, is that the synergy with the adityas, and then we'll have to look at the sun's nakshatras themselves, Kritika, Uttarafalguni, and Uttarashadha. We'll have a good lesson. We'll look at famous people with key planets in those nakshatras. And it's not just the sun in those nakshatras. Usually that's like too much. But the ascendant, the moon, or the risings, or the Lagna Lord, you know, in those nakshatras, and how that impacts them. There's all kinds of techniques for looking at sun's nakshatras too, for predicting career and things like that too. Now let's look at Winston Churchill's chart. He's let me pull that up here. Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to get to a page so I can look at two computer screens at once. Okay. You know, Winston Churchill, another one of our great politicians. Again, notice how he has a moon in the 12th house. Again, these public figures who are involved in sacrifice. To me, what's interesting about this chart, again, Mars in the first, again, not a great, the worst planet for Virgo, Lord of the 8th in the first, but it gave him a lot of fighting power, which he needed, obviously, to defeat Hitler. Really an incredible story if you watch his biographies. But his rising sign is 7 degrees of Virgo. You know, he really wanted to be a painter. Notice he's got Venus Atmakaraka retrograde. He was actually a very good painter, you know, but it never quite manifested. The Atmakaraka never quite, in the 3rd house, you know, of kind of artistic expression, really his real love. But he did agree to, he did become a politician and an incredible leader. And to me, what's kind of fascinating is that this nakshatra is also connected to, you know, kings and ancestors. It's in Pisces Navamsha, which is kind of about kind of completions and letting go. There's a lot of surrender in this, in his rising sign. He was able to kind of surrender to this incredible public duty of leading the Britain out of the war. And the interesting thing to me about this nakshatra is that, you know, there's the first pada is in Leo, and the other 3 padas are in Virgo. And there's a lot of service energy in Virgos, but because the sun owns the 12th house, it's almost, there's this connection for his sun and leadership to the 12th house. Again, his sun owns the 12th house, so again, there's that connection of service for country and sacrifice. And again, somehow the higher energies are coming up. his son's in Anuradha nakshatra, connected to Mitra, and being a friend to all, but kind of an incredible life. You didn't have to worry about money with Jupiter and Mercury in the second, but but again, he incredible leadership with that in that son's nakshatra connected to the 12th house. Again, we'll look at those nakshatra connections again. They're kind of interesting. Let's look at another lesson that we'll have is sun is Atmakaraka. So I think the Atmakaraka is undertaught in Vedic astrology. It's the most important planet in the chart, and sometimes it's misunderstood as the king of the chart because it's connected to the first house. It's actually connected to the first and the 8th houses. So it can elevate you quite a bit sometimes during the right dashas and transits and things like that. It tends to give you really deep lessons about that go on your whole life, and that one of the purposes of your life often is like getting through the karma of your Atmakaraka and understanding it. And I've been studying this deeply for 10 years, and I'm just, getting a handle on it. I have a lesson on YouTube on it. Some of those points are in this coming up here. So the planet with the highest number of degrees is the Atmakaraka. The sun might be at 27, 28, 29 degrees or something to be the Atmakaraka in your chart. It could be a little bit less. Rahu sometimes can be the Atmakaraka if it has really low degrees because it goes backwards. 0 to 2, sometimes it can be the Atmakaraka if you don't know your Atmakaraka. Again, the Atmakaraka is connected to the first and the 8th house, and the 8th house is past lives. And so it tends to bring in difficult lessons that we need to learn. I think there's a lot of suffering for the soul with the Atmakaraka. There's a lot of mental distress that the Atmakaraka creates. Its purpose, the Atmakaraka wants to get you enlightenment. So it may take away material things or deprive you of relationship or money or success at work, which are material things that are fleeting, and because it wants to remind you to find God and turn you to God. The Atmakaraka gives us the soul's purpose for this incarnation. We can rotate the whole chart around the Atmakaraka and make it the Lagna, and that's the whole thing. Maybe we'll look a little bit in that lesson. My Atmakaraka is Saturn. If I put my chart back here. We sometimes, even in the Rashi chart, we look at the Atmakaraka sometimes in the Navamsha chart for talents that we want in this lifetime. But the Atmakaraka in the Rashi chart is also interesting. Because, again, if we make Libra rising, my rising sign with Saturn, Atmakaraka in the first house, we got Jupiter in the 9th with Ketu there and aspecting Saturn. It really says a lot about my passion for teaching Vedic astrology, for teaching spirituality, for teaching in general, and just having a lot of energy around that and living my purpose. It's even getting higher now. The Atmakaraka gives us motivation to stay alive also. If we can look at planets 6 and 8 from the Atmakaraka, and they'll show us our debts to the world and the pains the soul has to give us. And it's, of course, this is our struggles. Now, this is kind of interesting. When I look at my chart, the sun in the 5th house is actually quite strong, and Lord of the 10th and the 5th should, in some ways I've been very blessed with career, and in some ways I've been very cursed with my financial business. And when we look at the planets 6 from the Atmakaraka and the Rashi chart, they're telling us the challenges that we have in life. In this case, Sun representing work and leadership for me, and under my underperformance sometimes in that area. The Saturn Atmakaraka in general has given me incredible challenges with employees and managing people and just not being too nice with people who are not doing a good job. So it's kind of been this lifelong lesson of, I could go through 20
employee horror stories that I've had over the years with the Saturn Atmakaraka, and I'm still going through it at 67. I know I'm just about to have a breakthrough this weekend, but we'll see. Planets from the 5th in the Atmakaraka and the Rashi chart, bring problems with judgment in our mind. Mars may give too much conflict in life. So this is, we forget to look at the Atmakaraka chart even from the Rashi, and we'll have to go that. The Atmakaraka is also a twisted Karaka. If you want to know what your problems are, take the Karaka for the Atmakaraka. So let's say your Atmakaraka is Venus. Venus governs marriage and relationship. If you have Venus Atmakaraka, you're going to have problems with relationship, or you have problems with women, or you're going to have problems with marriage just because, Venus Atmakaraka. Now, even if it's exalted and has all kinds of good aspects to it, it may be less, but it's still kind of a problem. So Saturn Atmakaraka problems with servants would be what the Vedas would say. In this case, it's employees. Mars Atmakaraka, Mercury Atmakaraka, Mercury Atmakaraka problems with friends. Sun Atmakaraka lessons about learning humility and overcoming pride and self-importance. And I know people with the Sun Atmakaraka, and they're kings, but they don't know how to come back to earth and work with other people, on a human level, and they have too much pride and over self-importance. We saw Donald Trump as Sun Atmakaraka also. It's just, maybe he's a gifted leader, but he hasn't learned these basic lessons of humility and pride, and he just got probably a big lesson losing the last election. But I don't know if he got it. It's one of these things, the Atmakaraka, it goes on your whole life. I don't know if it takes a long time to learn Atmakaraka lessons. Need to overcome desire for fame and power and be a team player. It's one of the things about Sun Atmakaraka. Dark side, ego issues, problems with father, those kind of things. So we'll look at the Sun Atmakaraka in people's lives, and it's quite fascinating. We went through the yogas from the sun already. Got a lot more material, but I also don't want to burn you out, because I tend to give too much out in these intros. But I think we have a good taste for some of the things I'm going to do in the course, and I want to open up the course to questions. And so if you're interested in the course, let's see, I have to find slide 15. I should have it at the end too. So if you're interested in the course, I am planning on starting it next Saturday. If I get like 10 people that want me to do it on Sunday, I will switch it. At general, noon is a good time for me. It's also when the sun is, in its power, so it seems like a good time to do the class. My classes are inexpensive. They run $20 to $25 a class. I sometimes have these discount coupons, and there is a discount coupon in the newsletter this weekend for $50. The course is running $395. These classes are very inexpensive. It seems it's a lot of money for some people. You have to realize you're getting 3 months you're getting 30 hours of class. I spend an average of 6 or 7 hours preparing each class. I mean, I don't do these for the money. Obviously, this is my biggest passion. And if you only are interested in the first 8 weeks of the class, which would be excluding the section on the adityas, which is, it would be, you could do that for $195. You could email me if you'd like to do that. I'm going to open it up to questions. At the end of the presentation in 2 hours, go to webinar. We'll send you a link to replay the talk. And in the link, there'll be a link to sign up for the course, and there'll be the coupon code to get $50 off. I was just looking, and I was not seeing that the coupon code was looking. If you ask my webmaster to fix it, if it doesn't get fixed,
You can email us and we'll send you a PayPal invoice if you'd like. I can also set up payment plans for you. 3 payment plans can work for me. I want to open it up to people who've taken my classes. Afi, I'm hoping you can share your experience with my class, and then other people can ask questions. Afi?
Yeah. Hi, Barry. I'm here. And so my experience with Barry, I've been student, with Barry's classes, online classes since 2016. So what is that, 6 years? A long, long time. And I am a return student over and over for various reasons. I mean, you looked at Barry's, if you saw Barry's biography, he has a wealth of knowledge and information about Vedic astrology. But what's fantastic about his teaching style is that he communicates that information clearly to the students. And during the class, he mentioned that he also works on the students' chart. He builds confidence in you as a teacher to work on charts and practice on charts. He communicates it clearly. He's humble. He's a very caring and generous teacher. I can't tell you enough about his teaching style, except for the fact that I keep coming back because he's one of the best teachers that I have, enjoyed. I highly suggest that you, sign up for this class. Thank you, Barry. And I would appreciate if you email me an invoice.
Great. Okay. Yeah. And I sometimes the website is not working right, and we can always, if you want to take the class, we'll get you an invoice. Okay. Joy, did you want to share anything? I think you're unmuted also. Did you want to share anything about your experience with my classes? I don't mean to put you on the spot. You might have gone to sleep because you're in Israel. Let's see. Joy, let me unmute you. Self-muted and muted by the organizer. So let me unmute you. Okay, try again. You should be able to unmute yourself, Joy. I just saw your mic turn green. Good. Let's. Sometimes this is tricky. Okay, let's try. Okay, you're on.
Okay. Hi. How are you?
Good, Joy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. What's new?
I don't know. I got to visit Joy in Israel. My family lives in Israel, and Joy's in Israel, and I made a trip up to Tel Aviv to see her, and she took me to this bridge that has all the astrological signs on it. It's a wishing bridge, and it had all this mosaic of it was just wonderful. Anyway, Joy's been a wonderful new friend. Joy, I don't know, would you want to share your new experience with me?
Oh, it was wonderful. Oh, I want to say about tell you about studying with Barry. So I'm a Westernist. I studied Western astrology. I find that you've made it very digestible for the Western mind. It brings all of the key elements of Eastern thinking, but it's modulated so that the Western mind can absorb it and can integrate it into their own knowledge. It's been wonderful up till now. I've taken, I think, 4 or 5 different classes, and I've never been disappointed. It's really built my knowledge. It's built my knowledge. Thank you for that, Barry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great having you. It's
Thank you.
It's so special visiting Joy. I was just like, that's amazing. So I'm going to open up the mic to questions. Sometimes it's hard for me to get into chat and look at questions. I'd rather have people ask questions live. We do have live questions during class. I think I'm going to unmute. You can raise your hand sometimes it's not always possible, but I'm muting everybody at the moment. So if you click on your orange mic, which is under, I don't know if you can find it under audio settings, you'll see a microphone, and you need to just click it and then turn it
Sometimes it doesn't work. If you raise your hand, I can definitely get you unmuted. But if you have a question, you can also put it in the you can also put it in the chat box. Okay, I'm also going to give Elizabeth a chance to meet. Elizabeth is also one of my students, and she's actually signed up for the class for sure. And Elizabeth, I can put you on the spot to share your experience with me. Okay, and again, we'll get your mic working. I've got let's see. Cannot self-muted. So if you click on your mic now, you're on. Okay, you're on.
Am I good? I think I'm good. How are you, Barry?
Good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, no, so Barry's, I've learned from a couple Vedic astrologers over the years, but Barry makes it so simple. He puts his heart and soul into these classes. The people that take them he just attracts a really good group of people. And the conversations we get into, the information Barry provides are just amazing. And he brings together a lot of information from a lot of different Vedic astrologers so that you're getting it all in one place, and he makes it easy to understand, simple, and just very, very knowledgeable. And I just love taking his classes. I keep coming back. I keep saying I need a break, and then I come back.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, yeah, I have a real passion about teaching Vedic astrology. It's like, you can see it in my chart, Jupiter, Ketu, and Gemini, and Purnavasu, and my 8th from the natal chart, and 4th from my son. So it's the thing that makes me most happy. And again, I don't do it for the money. I mean, some of my colleagues charge $7.95 for a course, or I've had one teacher charge, $1,800 for classes. I have to take these expensive classes sometimes to learn this stuff, and it really, for the $20 or $25 per class that we charge, it's really not very much. So, and if you have problems with payments, we can work that out. And most people have credit cards, and if you're in a really bind financially, talk to me and we can work something out. I'm more interested in sharing knowledge than getting rich teaching Vedic astrology. That's not why I do it. Okay, other questions? It's a quiet group. I usually have about a 2-week period before I start the class, but I had a little bit of jet lag coming back from Israel, and so the promo got delayed, and so now I just want to make sure that we get the class started. So I'm hoping to start next week. I'm planning on starting next week, and I know we have enough people signed up already, but please you can email me if you have any questions, if you have any needs, and I'll be there for you. Other questions? I don't know if it's going on here. I will let you out of class early then if there's no questions. So again, you can email me at barry2@appliedvedicastrology.com, my website, appliedvedicastrology.com. You'll get a link to sign up for the class. Again, you can email me if you can't get the discount coupon to work. I know when I looked at it this morning, it wasn't working, and I apologize. That discount will run through Monday, and we'll get it. I'm sure we'll get it working by Monday. If not, we'll email you an invoice if you want $50 off the $395 class. So thank you so much, everybody. I look forward to working with you, and if you have a friend who missed this presentation, you'll get a copy of the videotape. You could share it with them. Again, I look forward to serving you in any way that I can. Again, I'll remind you, for those of you who like meditation, and you get some powerful experiences from what I'm doing, I will be offering the weekly meditation meeting. I do it every day, every time after class. But we have class today, so at 2:15, which is in about a half hour, you can get on Zoom 871-7465-6683, and then we'll do a wonderful guided meditation called Soul Sync that will set some beautiful intentions to be at peace with yourself and the world, and the situations in your life and who you are. And there's a beautiful one that I'm doing today called Beautiful Mind. I've been doing it every day. It's so powerful. And then we'll have some blessings that I give out through Ekam Diksha that will also create new joy and healing in your life. So you're welcome to come to that after class in about a half hour. So see you all hopefully next week. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm going to officially end the webinar, and last chance for questions. And I'm sorry, maybe you're having trouble. Everybody knows Zoom, and I should probably do Zoom, and I'm doing Zoom for the meditation, but I don't like teaching my classes with Zoom because GoToWebinar has so many bells and whistles that make using it very easy when you're teaching, to remind people about the logins and things like that. But anyway, I'll end with a quick prayer then. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Richoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you someplace. Bye-bye.